Thank you, Andy, for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a wake-up call to action. This is a call to enlistment. This is a call to make change. This is a call to make football, soccer, the deciding factor, the force multiplier, the game changer in our decades-long fight against poverty here in the United States of America. This is a call to go beyond football, to go beyond soccer. This is a call to go beyond the game. This is a call to revolutionize the way we fight poverty. In early January of 2009, I, along with some 500,000 other Americans, suffered an unexpected and devastating loss of employment. Having been employed with the company no more than 7 months, my third such position in a year, the job paid around $5 an hour, plus tips, and my take-home pay was roughly $300 to $400 a week. A rather scanty earning indeed. But it is worth noting, however, that this meager recompense of some $17,000 a year represented a 10% increase in pay over that of my 2 previous employers. I worked 9 hours a day, most days without a lunch break, and 6 and 7 day work weeks were the norm. Although technically classified as unskilled, the labor was intensive, manual in nature, and exhausting. Working conditions were unsafe by any modern standard, though I have since come to question the modernness of our standards for employment at the bottom of the wage scale. And any open discontent was met with equally open threats of termination without recourse, of course. Still, upon learning of my termination in that first week, I was devastated. I was 2 weeks behind on my rent. I had run out of minutes on my prepaid cell phone. I had no savings. I had no investments. I had no food. I had no way to get around. I had no friends, no family, no one in a position to help. Indeed, my 3 brothers and my mother and sister were themselves in emergency housing at the time. I spent the first few days of that first week in January in deep despair, in utter depression, and in absolute terror. Frantically, I sent my resume out to any and every place I thought might hire me, and I pounded the pavement, as they say, going door to door, storefront to storefront, whether or not a help wanted sign was hung, inquiring about open positions, sitting for impromptu meetings with low-level managers, filling out applications, submitting my resume, and waiting for someone to call. The rest of my days, I spent looking for free food. I found a soup kitchen open for brunch, one open for an early dinner, and I planned my job searching activities around those hours. As day 1 came to a close, there was no word. Nor was there any word on day 2. Day 3 came and went in like fashion. Day 4, day 5, day 6. News reports at the time painted a dire picture of a U.S. labor market in full crisis. During the previous quarter, the September to December 2008 period, some 2 million workers fell off payrolls nationwide. And in the 2 quarters that would follow, some 4.5 to 5 million more would join the ranks of the unemployed, including each and every one of my former co-workers, as the establishment from which I had most recently departed shut its doors and went out of business. The nation was in recession. It is not entirely accurate, however, to ascribe my job loss and my precarious predicament with respect to housing and with respect to employment solely to an acutely contracting labor market. I, like many others, was particularly vulnerable to fluctuations in the business cycle. The household I knew as a child was headed by a single female with only a high school diploma, whose annual income was frequently less than half of that of the poverty line, less than half than that of the poverty line, for whom stable employment was uncommon, in an urban sprawl where quality educational and commercial opportunities had long since abandoned or never existed, where we were only one of dozens of households concentrated in crowded and fast deteriorating housing, where public assistance was a diminishing, grossly insufficient, but still a main source of income, where violent crime was common, police intimidation and brutality a fact of life, and where illegal substance use and abuse barely rose to the level of any real concern. It was, as some students of the sociology of advanced urban marginality have termed it, a hyper-ghetto. On day 7 of that first week in January 2009, my nightmare came true. I walked the 5 miles from my room to an intake housing shelter on the east side of Manhattan, literally adjacent to the place where I was born, to the hospital in which I was born, and which housed some 1,000 other men. I was told I would remain no longer than 21 days, but due to some severe overcrowding, 42 days later, I was still there. Then came day 43. It was on this day that I was transferred to another facility, the Help USA Supportive Employment Center on Ward's Island, on Randall's Island. It's an island in between the boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn, between the boroughs of Manhattan and Queens, the Bronx and Queens, which houses probably some thousands of homeless and or mentally ill men and women. And it is here that football would change my life forever. Still, though, I was uncertain. Uncertain of my employment, uncertain of my income security, uncertain of myself, uncertain of my future. I had found it hard to keep jobs in the past, and even harder to manage the small amounts of money that I earned. What if I lost my job again? I would imagine. What if I fail again? I would question. I must admit, there was some small part of me that wished to remain under the watchful eye of the state, that desired to remain where I was, rather than face the world alone and fail again. I now believe that underlying these uncertainties was a broken confidence and a broken will and a depleted sense of self-worth. Left unchecked, my broken will and confidence surely would force me back to this place. I now understand that any real recovery, financial or otherwise, must run in parallel or in tandem with the recovery of one's psychology and of one's spirit. One night, upon returning to the Help Supportive Employment Center and making my way to the facility's aging indoor basketball court, I was surprised to find the space preoccupied with what looked like a soccer team. I stood in the doorway in amazement as soccer balls whizzed back and forth, and people, many of whom I was sure were not residents, ran frantically up and down the gym. The room was filled with laughter, with cheer, and genuinely good energy. A much welcome change of pace from my isolated and uncertain and fearful environment. It was refreshing, and for a moment, no. For the first time, I forgot where I was, and I forgot who I was. I cannot recall for how long I stood in the doorway and watched. I do recall that I was soon approached by a man who I would later come to know well, Lawrence Cann, founder of Street Soccer USA, and invited to join the practice. I had never played soccer before, nor was I a fan of the sport. I had no shorts, no sneakers, and no idea what to do even if I did. Lawrence assured me that he would provide the necessary gear and that many of those who I saw were also new to the game. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, and The rest, as they say, is history. Within a month of joining the team, I moved out of the shelter and into an apartment share. Confidence renewed. Within 3 months, I enrolled in community college and pursued my associate's degree in accounting. Self-worth restored. The program staff which included volunteers from around the country, as well as former residents, endowed me with a rich abundance of positive social and cultural capital, which I used, and used well, as a springboard to propel myself forward. Seemingly overnight, the resources of football became my resources. The networks of football became my networks. The power of football became my power. The power to make change, to overcome, and to excel. Day after day, practice after practice, I began to heal. I relearned commitment and accountability and responsibility through teamwork. I relearned self-awareness and how to assess my strengths and weaknesses. First on the field, and then applied that model off the field. I relearned how to respond to failure and to loss, and that I should not fear it, but embrace it when necessary and work like hell to prevent it. I relearned how to respond to winning and to success with self-discipline and with moderation. My mentors carefully assisted me in becoming goal-oriented and forward-focused. My locus of responsibility was curtailed. I, and I alone, would be responsible for my own success. Not only did football help me begin a process of psychological healing, not only did football help me believe in myself again, not only did football help me find the confidence to dream again, it enabled me to make change, real change, happen for myself. I have seen this process, this very process of self-improvement through self-empowerment, activated in the lives of hundreds of other men, women, and children across the country, here in the United States, although, to be completely honest, not nearly to its potential. Let us be honest here today. The power of football has not found its way into America's slums. The power of football has not yet reached into the belly of the hyper-ghetto. The power of football has not yet penetrated the hearts and minds of the millions who exist here without hope and who face a social welfare state in a deep retrenchment. Today, here, right now, I call you to action. I summon all that is good within you. I summon all that is right and that is endearing. Bring football and its power to the huddled masses. Bring football and its power to the wretched refuse of our teeming shore. Bring football and its power to the homeless and to the hopeless. Lift up the light of the world's game. Give them not rest, but resurgence. Give them what was given unto me. Thank you so much.
Ideal having to come back up here. What an incredible story.